All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to learn about Jungian theory in the book 1984. Right there's a picture of a book that's called 1984, and that eye is just a representation of their society and represents the idea that you're always being watched no matter what you do. Anyways, Jungian theory is composed of archetypes which are used in books to classify characters based on their characteristics or goals. In this book, archetypes drive the protagonist, who is named Winston, and his journey through governmental hate. Archetypes can also be assigned in our own lives, showing us the kind of people we have around us. And after hearing about Jungian theory, you guys will be able to classify people in your lives and see how they're affecting your plot throughout life. So, we're going to get into a lot of fun stuff. I hope you guys stay awake and enjoy me talking in a really monotone voice. But we're going to get right into it. So, enjoy. All right, so I said we were going to talk about George Orwell, and here we are, ladies and gentlemen. So, George Orwell is the author of 1984. His real name is Eric Arthur Blair. He just used the pseudonym George Orwell for some reason. I don't really know why. But he was born in Bengal, India. And from a very early part of his life, Eric was against imperialism. He quit his job as a member of the Imperial Police and lived among the poor people of England. He did this so that he could witness on his own what it was like to be on the lower class of England, because he thought that the rich was very divided from the poor, and this is what led him to hate imperialism and be more of a socialist. But after learning what life was like among the lower class, Blair decided that he was completely against imperialism and even declared himself as a communist. Um, because World War II was happening, Blair saw what the Nazis and Stalin parties were doing, and he didn't think it was a good thing. So he wrote the book in 1984 to warn everyone of the nature and possibilities with those forms of government, how controlling they can be, and what a worst case scenario could look like. And Eric Blair died in January 1950 from tuberculosis, but while he was in and out of the hospital, he managed to write 1984, and it's one of his best stories, so props to him. So now we're going to talk about 1984 a little bit, get you some background information so you guys aren't clueless as to what I'm talking about. So the book 1984 is about a middle-aged man named Winston who lives in a futuristic society. This society is a mix of communism and socialism, where the government, otherwise known as Big Brother, controls every aspect of its citizens' lives by making all the laws and regulations. The people are grouped into classes: the inner party, the outer party, and the proles. The inner party is like the rich people that are super devoted to Big Brother. The outer party is like the working class, and then the proles are like the outcasts. They don't even live inside the city, and they don't even get watched by Big Brother. These classes are much like the system that the US has, with an upper, middle, and lower class to which people fit into based on their monetary value. The government is split into the ministries of truth, plenty, love, and peace, and these four aspects of government control literally everything that has to do with living. The ministries' names are completely opposite to what they actually do. So the Ministry of Truth, just that's the part of the government that recreates history and all the facts and changes things whenever they want to. The Ministry of Plenty is the ones that regulate like food output, and it's not very good, so they're not very plentiful. The Ministry of Love is where the traders go to be tortured, so it's not very loving. And the Ministry of Peace is the part of the government that talks about the wartime. So obviously those are all completely opposite from what they're named. Um, these ministries will rewrite history because they burn and destroy old history and type new, up-to-date news. If that news ever changes, the records will be destroyed and new facts will be made in their place. In the citizens' lives, they are controlled and scrutinized almost everywhere they go, and all the words that are spoken or thought are recorded and listened to for signs of being a traitor, in which case you'd be caught and tortured. Okay, so before I go on, I'm going to show you guys a thing that was in the book called 2 Minutes 8. And basically, it was something that occurred every day for 2 minutes, where the government will put up a propaganda of like enemies of the state, and basically all the people would sit there and scream and act crazy. per 2 minutes, and you'll see that in this video. After the end. Yep.
As we grasp at victory, there is a cancer, an evil tumor, growing, spreading in our midst. Shout! Shout! Shout out his name!
Alright, so basically you can see those people are freaking crazy, and the guy that they were screaming out on the screen was Goldstein, who was the leader of the rebellion, and we'll get to him in a little bit. Alright, so now we're going to talk about Jungian theory, and what is it? So Jungian theory was created by a psychologist known as Carl Jung. His theories were used as a way to give characters a position in the plot of stories. These positions are known as archetypes, and their purpose are to organize and explain a plot based on what characters fit in and their regards to the protagonist's journey. So the picture there shows the different kinds of archetypes and what categories they fit into. And the archetypes that I used in this presentation are the hero, the lover, the caregiver, the rebel, and the ruler. So you may be wondering why Thor is on the screen. We'll get to that here in a minute, but I figured it'd be a better way to explain archetypes. So we're going to start off here with Winston. He's pretty much this average citizen that for some reason just really hates his government. He's the protagonist in 1984. He's the character that the reader most identifies with, and the reader sees the world from his point of view. Winston lives in a world where every action is scrutinized and watched. The citizens are basically mindless beings that work and live for Big Brother. And from the start of the novel, Winston is against Big Brother. At first, there are little things like thoughts in his head or little passive aggressive thoughts. But later in the story, these feelings escalate into him actually writing things down about the government, which is essentially suicide if somebody found that. Or he even goes and sleeps with his mistress, Julia, who we'll get to in a little bit. But I classified Winston as the hero. He goes against the grain and tries to improve his life by going against the whole society. The hero in this story and in our lives is the person that goes against the grain and tries to make a bad situation right. The hero drives both the novel and people in the world because it gives individual lives purpose in their own story. So Winston didn't like Big Brother throughout the whole story. He really hated him. And even when he was caught and tortured, he still really did not like them. And it wasn't until like the last chapter of the book, I think, until he actually was tortured and brainwashed into loving Big Brother. So we have Thor here, and like I said, I thought this would be an easier way to explain archetypes to you. So Thor here is obviously the hero. He goes against the bad guys and he fights for what's right. And at the end of the day, he's the hero. Next up is O'Brien, who is a devoted inner party member. He's basically a spy and the head of the Thought Police, which they go around and catch people for having bad thoughts about the government and torture them to make them right again, I guess. O'Brien goes undercover and plays the role of a member of the rebellion, otherwise known as the Brotherhood, which is led by Goldstein. He convinces Winston to join the rebellion and verifies that Winston is indeed an enemy of the party. Later in the story, Winston and Julia are detained and they are both tortured into loving Big Brother. Based on O'Brien's goals and characteristics, I thought he fit in well with the caregiver. It sounds like a bad classification, but O'Brien loves his government and all the citizens in it. The only reason that he tortures people is because he feels bad for them, and in his mind, they have gone astray and need help getting back in the line. The caregiver's main goal is to care for others, which O'Brien does in his own way. So, although he's torturing people and some people might think it's bad, he thinks in his mind that he's doing the right thing and helping the citizens. So we got Nick Fury here because he loves the Avengers and he cares for them and he puts his life on the line for him, even though he doesn't really have any powers. But he still goes out there every day and supports them. So that's a good representation of the caregiver. Now we get to talk about Julia, who's the lover. Basically, Julia is Winston's lover and ally in the novel. Julia is also against the party, but in a different way than Winston is. While Winston wants to provide a better future for the next generation by overthrowing Big Brother in his lifetime, Julia just wants to quench her own desires, mostly sex. Sex is the weapon that she uses to attack the party, although it wasn't very effective. Julia knew that there was no way to bring Big Brother down, so instead of outwardly defying them, she blended in and fulfilled her own desires. She attacked the party from being a seemingly perfect citizen. She was very devoted, and she never slipped up in front of the public. So Julia's role in Winston's journey is very clear and evident as the lover. The lover is someone in novels and real life that cares and thrives off of the protagonist, in this case Winston, and cares for them in a loving way. Throughout the novel, she pushes Winston to do what he believes in, and in the end, they are both tortured and forced to lose their love for one another. So here we got Pepper Potts, and she loves Tony Stark. She supports him, and she hopes that he does the best. And, sometimes she doesn't like his job, but she deals with it because she loves him. So, yeah. Now we're going to talk about Goldstein, who is the leader of the rebellion, and he got classified as a rebel for that reason. Goldstein is a pretty confusing character because no one knows if he's real or if it's just an idea. They're like a piece of propaganda made by Big Brother to try to find the traitors when they pledge their allegiance to him. So no one's ever seen him, but everyone hopes that he's actually real. This is how Winston and Julia get discovered and caught. They proclaim their allegiance to the Brotherhood when they go to O'Brien's house, and because they thought he was a part of the Brotherhood as well. It turns out he wasn't. So Goldstein's role in the plot makes him a good fit for the rebel. His rebellion goes against the higher power and hope that one day Big Brother might be overthrown and people can live freely once again. His core values and desires align with that of the rebel, making him the perfect fit for the archetype. Without Goldstein, there would be no rebellion in the people, and they would all be stuck in a world where they couldn't do anything and they wouldn't be free at all. So we got Captain America here along with this little squad from Civil War. They're all going against the United Nations, so they're all rebels. And it's just a good example of what a rebel is. Lastly here, we got the man himself, Big Brother, who is the ruler. And we got Thanos with him for obvious reasons. But Big Brother is the face of the government. In Oceania, the citizens are forced to believe that Big Brother is a single, omnipotent being that has been and always will be the leader of the nation. In all reality, Big Brother is just a government ran with people who all believe that someone out there is the true Big Brother and that they just work for him. So it's kind of like Goldstein in the way that no one's actually seen them, but they believe in them for some reason. Anyways, the party that works for him is collectively known as the party, and the government and citizens all worship Big Brother. Big Brother's purpose is to give the citizens a friendly, brotherly figure to look up to, and having this type of brother figure makes the citizens more likely to work and live under his control, because it's your brother, you love him. And so clearly, the best archetype to go along with Big Brother would be the ruler. The ruler is described as someone that wants absolute power, and they will attain this power and control by any means necessary. So we got the big boy Thanos here, because he pretty much sacrifices anything, even his own daughter, to get these stones and balance out all life. So yeah, he's pretty much the biggest example of a ruler that I could think of. So moving on from Marvel, we're gonna snap away from those thoughts, and we're gonna move on to my final thoughts on 1984. So I'd say that Big Brother is always watching you. So overall, 1984 did a really good job of showing what can happen in socialistic societies and how serious they can get and how controlling and how they can even torture their citizens. But the archetypes in the story help me understand the plot in a more clear way. And from this, I have been able to classify people around me, giving me a different perspective on the way life goes. A final thought regarding this book: if you read 1984, which I highly recommend, it's pretty good. It's really eerie and discomforting to read certain events that happen in that book, because some of the things that happen are things that are happening in our society today. Obviously not as clear and forceful, but thinking about some aspects of our government really reflects some of the characteristics of Big Brother, and that's kind of worrying and distressful, seeing that a guy that wrote this book back in the 1940s is predicting what life is like nowadays. So yeah, it's pretty discomforting. So to wrap it up here, ladies and gentlemen, we got one last slide here. It's pretty important. It pretty much wraps up the whole essay. But before we get there, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for coming out today and listening to me speak in a monotone voice about a book that you guys haven't read. And I hope that I have explained enough and elaborated enough to where you guys understand what I'm even talking about. But without further ado, we got the last slide here, and it's gonna be a banger. You guys ready? 1, 2, 3. We're excited. Best page ever. All right, see you guys later. Have a good day. Goodbye.